Hello, everyone. It's usually how I open the show. I did a podcast last week on, I think it was Friday, with Madeleine Black. Unfortunately, I had a bit of tech issues and it didn't go through, which is a shame. She has a wild story, and I think a lot of people needed to hear it. I'm going to try and tell her story and what we spoke about the best I can. It's a hard one. I was very interested to talk to Madeleine because of what I went through as a child. I was molested by two different people on two different occasions, family members, when I was very young, very, very young. That's fucking me up. Then eventually raped when I was an adult, and it's hard for a lot of people to believe that. Yeah, but guys can be raped too. Madeleine's story is incredibly extreme. It is a good insight to what goes on and what is let go by a lot of people, especially men towards women. But also a conversation had a little bit to touch on the differences. There, like, I think the biggest argument we reach nowadays is like it happens to men too, and it definitely does. That's not what they're talking about. It's there's different aspects of it. There's a level of fear that women go through on a regular basis when it comes to stuff like this. So I think it's very important to put this out. I wasn't going to do anything to follow this up. It was a good conversation, and I could have kept it to myself, which is unfortunate, but I felt the need to put something out and hopefully raise some awareness, especially in Australia with everything that's going on. Hopefully, this resonates not only with women but with men, and we can all do a little bit better, change our behavior, and sort of do something to curb this thing that is going on and has been going on for quite a while. I'm a bit about it, but I'll push through. We'll get through it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to play Madeleine's her TED Talk. It'll probably give you a bit more of a description of what she spoke to me about at the start initially, and then hopefully, like I said, I can make it up and try and go through some of the things that we spoke about. I'll also put all of Madeleine's links in the description, so you guys can go check it out for yourself. She was really good to talk to, not only in a sense of what she went through. She was very accommodating for my story as well. She sort of cemented the fact that it's not a competition. A lot of people out there try and compete with their stories and stuff. And I think if everybody's been through it, guys, girls, kids, whoever, it should be something that we stick together about, and it's not us competing over each other that should be the focus. It's us competing against the people doing it, and not wanting to change, and allowing the behavior and allowing the actions to go on without any repercussions or anything really. All right, so I'm going to play the video that she sent me. Like I said, this is her TED Talk. She does a bunch of these. These are everywhere. She's incredibly good at speaking, incredibly good at putting her story across. And like I said, we'll try and unpack it a little bit once it's done. So give me a minute.
Is there something holding you back? Something that nobody else knows, that you can't speak about? When I was 13, I knew that my childhood was over. I had this friend at school who was so cool, everything that I wasn't, and when she suggested a night out, I jumped at the chance. Now, her mum was away, and we both lied about where we were staying, and somehow we managed to buy, of all things, a bottle of vodka, which we took to a local cafe in North London which might sound pretty sophisticated, but it wasn't. It was pretty scuzzy. Now, I was just this skinny 13-year-old girl who had never drunk before, and unsurprisingly, the drink went straight to my head. Soon I was chucking up everywhere, and we were kicked out. 2 of the young men from our table left at the same time, and they put us in a taxi to take us back to my friend's mum's empty flat. When we arrived at the building, I was literally legless, and the 2 of them bumped me up 4 flights of stairs, just like a sack of potatoes. When we got into the flat, they separated us straight away, putting us into different rooms. And I really thought that they were there to take me out of the clothes I'd been sick in, put me in the bed, and let me sleep off the alcohol. But it became very clear, very quickly, that they were there for something else. It's very odd what takes place in your mind when you're being raped by 2 men. I could hear a barbecue down in the communal gardens, and I'm lying there whilst these men are violating my body, wondering, I wonder what they're eating, chicken or beef, burgers or kebab, basically refusing to connect with the scene of the crime, my body. And when my attention came back into the room, I noticed that there was a wallpaper border running around the top of the walls made out of pink and grey bows. And I counted those bows over and over and over again. There were 44 in total, and it is a number that follows me everywhere still to this day. But after a while, the violence escalated and the counting didn't help anymore. And I literally left my body, which was so surreal because here I am on the floor, tied by a wrist and an ankle to the pipes of the radiator. And here I also am, sitting on top of the wardrobe, watching the scene down below. Near to the end, the worst one, as he picks up his knife and holds it to my throat, says to me, "If you tell anyone, we will find you and we will kill you." And I believed him. And then they put me back in the bed and left. In the morning, I could hear this jingly-jangly sound, and I thought they were the keys in the door. I thought they're coming to finish me off. But the sound actually came from the bracelets on my friend's wrist. She was now in the bed next to me. She was still dressed. I was now naked. She hadn't been touched at all. I had injuries on my body, but no idea how I had got them. There was traces of blood, semen, and excrement. There were cuts, bruises, and bites. There were cigarette burns on my thighs and on my breasts, and I had been stabbed. Everything was so hazy to me in that moment. The only thing that was clear was that nothing could ever be the same again. I ran the hottest bath that I could, and I scrubbed my body till it was red raw. And once I got dressed, we decided to tidy up the flat and not speak about it. You see, already I was thinking, well, I'd lied to my parents, I'd met boys, I'd bought alcohol. What did I expect? I'd brought this on myself. This was my fault. And then we went our separate ways. And the following day, we went back to school as if nothing had happened. Except I know now that's not quite true, because what we don't speak about leaks out of us. And it leaked out of me in so many ways. I developed an eating disorder. I had so many fears, phobias, anxieties. I used drugs and alcohol to numb out. But worst of all was what it did to my mind. Whilst I couldn't really still remember many details from that night, it just left me feeling so worthless, dirty, and contaminated. I didn't understand the point to being me or being alive, and one day I swallowed handfuls of pills that I found around the house, hoping to end my life. Clearly, it didn't work. But can you imagine how I felt when I woke up in hospital, not even knowing I'd had my stomach pumped? You can't even kill yourself, I thought. You can't even get that right. What a loser. So from there, they transferred me to a children's psychiatric ward where I would spend 2 or 3 months. But once I got home, my behavior didn't improve. I would say that I rebelled even more, partying hard, becoming promiscuous because I was just too scared to say no. One morning, my mum is waiting for me as I'm sneaking in late. She's so angry. "Don't you realize the danger you're putting yourself in?" she says to me. But I still couldn't find my voice to tell her. So I wrote a note, which I left on my pillow. And when I came home from school, my parents asked me, "Is this true?" "Yes," I replied quietly. So they called my friend, and she said, "No, she's got it wrong. They were nice boys. They just brought us home." Just before my 17th birthday, I went to Israel for a year. And about 4 weeks before the end, I met this guy called Stephen. He was a blonde, blue-eyed Glaswegian. I mean, why wouldn't I fall for a Scot? But he was the first man that I felt safe with, and I knew that I could trust. And over time, with his love, I learned that I was lovable, that I could give love back in return, and I could slowly learn to like myself, maybe even love myself one day. After a few years, he popped the question, and I said yes. Initially, the idea of starting a family terrified me. I thought that giving birth was going to be like being raped again. But my best revenge has been having my 3 gorgeous girls and living my life as best as I possibly can. And I really thought that motherhood had healed me. But Anna, my eldest daughter, turned 13, and out of nowhere, flashbacks, nightmares, memories just came flooding in. I thought I was going mad. So I went back to therapy again, and I asked my therapist to make these pictures stop. You see, for years, it had been like a jack-in-the-box. I'd been stuffing the memories deep down inside of me, but the lid had sprung open now, and I couldn't close it anymore. He kind of laughed at me, and I quickly realized that the way in was going to be my way out. Near to the end of these sessions, he suggested something outrageous to me one day. Perhaps these 2 young men weren't born rapists. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How dare he say that to me? I was so angry. You see, for years, I fantasized about somebody kidnapping the 2 of them, taking them to an empty flat, beating them up, tying them up, raping and torturing them for 4 to 5 hours on end, just like they had done to me. Then they would know that the impact of rape, it doesn't last for one night, it lasts decades. But a seed had been planted, and I needed to understand how could these 2 young men know to be so violent towards another human being. And I remembered something that a good friend said to me years ago, which I never forgot. My friend Anne used to be a midwife, and she told me that she had delivered thousands of babies, and she never once met an evil one. And just like her, I do believe we are all born a blank canvas, but we get conditioned by life. And I wondered, what had these 2 young men seen, heard, or even experienced themselves to make them behave that way with me that day? And somehow, I started to feel compassion in my heart towards them. I mean, if I still held on to all that anger, it would have no impact on them. It would only hurt me and my family. And then I realized I could take it one step further. I could choose to forgive them in order to make peace with my past. Now, I have to be very clear here and say 2 things. 1, I will never forgive the act of rape. And secondly, I am not saying that in order to heal, you need to forgive. This was my path and how I chose to do it. Forgiveness was actually nothing to do with them. I didn't need them standing in front of me to tell me that they were sorry. It was an act of self-love, totally self-empowering, and my key to freedom that cut the cords that limited my growth and tied me to the past. The intense, crippling shame that I felt for years never belonged to me. It always belonged to them. And I am not my body or the things that were done to me. I am so much more than the sum of one night. And I also know that it's not what happens to us in life that is important, but what we do with it that really matters. And if I have a choice in how I respond, then we all have a choice too. And I'd like to leave you with some questions to think about. Is there a hurt, event, or disappointment that you still hold on to? And if you do, what purpose does it serve? And could you, like me, learn to accept the facts for what they are, knowing that they can't be changed, and let it go? Thank you.
So yeah, that's Madeleine's story. Like I said, crazy. It's very hard to believe. Just sort of expanding on everything she went through. These two young boys were older, so they were 17. So maybe at the time it didn't seem that much older, but definitely old enough to know better. They're also diplomats from America, I believe. So they're from a very wealthy family, very low risk of repercussion, which probably like enabled the behavior a little bit more to justify it in their head. But who knows? There was another thing where I think she kept bringing up as well when we were discussing, and it's very easily relatable. People who go through similar things like this feel an immense amount of guilt and shame. I know I did. I was very, very shameful of what happened. It's very hard to put into words like how you describe it. A lot of people associate it with hate, like you hate things, but it is more guilt and shame where you sort of internalize it and you lash out because of it. I think if anybody knew me through my 20s, I think just before I turned 20, I told like maybe one or two people about it. And I think as soon as I opened the doors, it was this flood of guilt and shame that came along with it. And then if you knew me back then, you could probably see the behavior change quite a bit. Exactly like she was saying, where she had trouble talking about it. She did open up to her parents when she was young, as she said. But her parents sort of shut down. Her parents couldn't handle it. Her dad was okay, but her mum really, really, really shut down. Stopped talking, didn't want to discuss it at all, which Madeleine found out later. It's because she was sexually abused by her friend's parent multiple times when she was 8 years old. So when Madeleine brought it up to her mum, it was just flashbacks and flooding back to that moment of when it happened to her. So then once again, before Madeleine found out, she just thought her mum didn't want to talk about it or deal with it, which obviously just made it worse. It just really extended the process of healing. There was also the part where she was talking about like her friend saying that wasn't it. You know, the boys were nice. Which is hard to unpack as well, because it's like, why was she not there? She was obviously in the bed with her after, so she would have seen some of the damage. Also probably not wanting to get into trouble. But this led us to the conversation regarding these like false accusations of you know, women, and like men do it too, falsely accusing people, especially of notoriety, to get a little something out of it. And Madeleine, obviously being very well researched, really pointed out a fact that maybe 2% are false accusations and the rest are legitimate, or they have some legitimate backing. But it's just one of those things. I think people use it as an argument point to really justify what's happening. So, especially with this Jared Hayne thing that's come out, where a lot of people like, she's just after the money. You can look at the facts that it's based off, even the little bit of research that I did based on it, where it was like she was talking to her friends, talking to her mum, and there was like a message that she sent to a friend that really resonated in terms of like he's got power, he's got money. That initial threat of being destroyed by somebody with power is one reason. But a lot of people, like Madeleine said, it's years and years after. Imagine your name being really just dragged through the mud to get to a point. Like, what did she get out of it? Money. What does money mean when somebody has put you through so much? You know what I mean? It's such a silly argument in some cases where it's like she just wanted money, or he just wanted money, or whatever it may be. There's long-term damage that goes along with this, and money, like in my experience, you could have given me $1 million and it would have just made the problem worse, probably, to try and cope with it. Money doesn't fix it. Money helps, but it's not going to fix the issue and the damage that was caused by these particular things. There's a couple other things I want to talk about. I'm not gonna go on. We touched on, once again, this ongoing cause. So Madeleine went through a lot of therapy, a lot of mental and body therapy to come to a sense where she feels okay. And as she stated in the TED Talk, there was a bit of and this is what a lot of people struggle with. Even Madeleine sort of backed this up, where the forgiveness side of it, where people are like, how can you forgive? It couldn't have happened if you've forgiven them. And really just to sort of clarify, it's not face to face. We're good. We're okay now. We can move on with our lives. It's like you have to accept what happened. You have to forgive them in a sense, because they're humans. They make mistakes, and that is a very hard thing to say, and a lot of people don't get it. I went through something similar of, I hated it. I hated them so fucking bad. Not because of what they did. It's because what I was doing to myself. I was using it as an excuse to do particular things that were really damaging to myself, my family, and the people around me. And there was a time where I sort of clicked, and I was like, well, exactly like Madeleine said, it's not them to like continue the shame. Like, why do I need to carry the guilt and the shame of something that they did? Just like she said, it shouldn't be on the person who went through it. It should be on the person who did it, and they should carry the guilt. And I think that was something for me, where it was like, they're going to carry it more than I do. And the better I do in life is a better payback than sitting in my home, drinking myself stupid, doing drugs, trying to forget. Me being the best me is the best payback. And once again, Madeleine really, really reiterated this. She really brought it up a few times when we were speaking. She was like, the worst thing you can do is hang on to it. And she was like, my best payback was having my children, having a happy life with my husband, and moving on. She's like, that is my best payback. It's the one that doesn't self-destruct in on itself and cause more damage. It's the one that you can live with, and you can go, I'm going to do better. I'm going to make better choices. I'm not going to play into what they left me with. Yeah. So in terms of the healing process, and I think this is not just in one place. It's not just sexual abuse. It's not rape. It's not just any kind of trauma that people went through, this is the thing that both me and her, we really fed off each other with. It's not just an attack on the mind, it's an attack on the body, it's an attack on all your senses. I remember telling her, like, when it happened to me as a child, there's a very distinct smell. There's a perfume or a deodorant or a cologne or something. I remember this smell, and it's quite common. And I'd be walking through a mall and I'd smell it, and your palms, like, even thinking about it now, my palms are sweaty. It's this really visceral attack on your senses. And she was like, to combat that, you gotta fill your glass with the positive side of that visceral sense, you know. So start doing active things, not just going to go see a psych. Going to see a psych will help you unpack the mental. But Madeleine herself, she's taken up karate, she's taken up windsurfing. She does these things that put her back into this fear, but in a positive way, where it's controlled, and she will gain knowledge and control and power out of it, rather than a fear of something bad happening. So when you go through something like this, there's a sense of normality that's attached to it. You get this homeostatic feeling of like, this is how it's meant to be. And I think a lot of people who have been through sexual abuse can relate, where they apply it to their future relationships, because there's always that little bit of fear that you need to feel safe. And then that's where, you know, drinking, you know, the excessive use of drugs, this all plays into it, because there's that aspect of fear, but there's such a negative sense. That fear is pointed in such a negative direction, and it's normalized. And me and her, like I said, once again, we really riffed with this, where it was like, if you point at that fear in such a positive way, take up something that you wouldn't normally do, whether it be like her karate, the way, like going to a gym where you're unfamiliar, like just doing something spontaneous and fearful that you're going to bring something positive out of. She was like, that is the thing that continues to improve her mental health and her mental ability to overcome, and not only that, to inspire other people to overcome. Having said that, she said it is very ongoing, and I think a lot of people need to be aware that it's an everyday thing. The thing that you've been left with is not, it's fixed, I'm good now. It is ongoing. So even her going through all of this, by the time she had her daughters, she said she was becoming better. She started really, really like getting it together, and then she applied that to her life. Well, this has happened, my life is better, and this has happened, and my life is better. And that was okay until her daughter turned 13. And then it was an immediate floodgate of the exact same thing that she went through. All those thoughts, feelings, and fears immediately came back into it. And she was like, she had to steer into the wind, essentially. She was like, I acknowledged her story isn't my story, and to apply the same principle to it is not only going to do Madeleine damage, but it'll do her child damage. So she was like, I allowed my daughter to go out underage. And she was like, I allowed my daughter to drink underage. And this is in, like, a lot of people might hear that and go, well, you know, it's the problem, and you're reinforcing it. She was like, there's always a sense of control over it. She had ultimate control, and she explained this to her daughter, and her daughter understood it. And she was like, if I didn't do that, I would go the rest of my life regretting it, and it would just keep reoccurring in her brain, not only what she went through, but what she put her daughter through. So, and then she's like, now my daughter is happy, healthy, 28, married, doesn't drink at all, doesn't go out. She got all of her willies out when she was younger. And she's grateful for being able to let go of that experience, her own experience, and not bring other people into it, especially her daughter. Other than that, I think that's that's pretty much the crux of it. There was a lot more. We spoke for about an hour 15. Very powerful. Like I said, I definitely, it was a bit of a therapy session for me as well. I think a lot of people listening to this will be the first time that they've heard this, and this is my family included, from me. A lot of friends haven't heard my story, and it's, once again, it's not a cry for help. I've been through years of this. I've been through the therapies. I've been through the downside of it. I just hope, and once again, this is what me and Madeleine spoke about, being a bridge between this bizarre gap between this men and women going through similar situations. It does happen to guys, but it's definitely not happening in the same way. Guys who go through it, you're not scared to go for a run. You're not scared to go out with your friends. It damages you mentally. It definitely damaged me. But I don't have a fear of walking to the shop at night. I don't have to carry my keys in between my fingers. And it's something that we all need to acknowledge. It does happen. And Madeleine brought up a very good point about the Me Too thing. Oh, not the Me Too, the Black Lives Matter. Every life does matter, but she's like, that's not the argument. The argument is the really systemic damage that we're doing to, especially she's from the UK, and it happens there too, to black people, and it's their argument, and it's their cause, and for us to intervene and interject our own thoughts and beliefs because we're missing something is completely missing the point. And that speaks very truly for this as well. It does happen to men, does happen to children. That's not the argument. That is not what we're bringing up. It's a different topic. It's a different subject for a different day. We need to deal with this because it is damaging, and it's incredibly fearful for the women that are going through it. Like I said, I had just had a podcast then, and we're talking about her ex-partner stalking her. And I said to her, I've had people girls rock up to my house, unexpected, unannounced, at all hours. I've had them show up where I am. Once again, there is zero fear attached to that. I'm a guy. I'm pretty big. I can kind of handle myself if it gets out of hand. And then you reverse a role. It's like if I was to rock up at somebody's house, a woman's house, that would be fucking terrifying. If I was to rock up where they are, if I was to constantly do it, there is a huge amount of fear attached to that me personally did not get. I can't speak for everybody. So that's what we're addressing. We need to stop this. And it's this, I put them as dusty ass old men in these power positions that are justifying their actions because they come from a time where even Madeleine was like, her mum's mum was around at the time where, the boss would be like, come sit on my lap, and he'd pinch their ass, and he'd do all of that, and it was perfectly okay. And these are the next generation on of males that are doing this to women and thinking it's okay. I think it's just from both sides, we got to do a lot better. We have to really start working together and stop working against each other to get to the same cause that we're all fighting for the same thing. Nobody wants this to happen. And if you do want it to happen, just imagine it being your sister or your mum or your girlfriend or whatever. Like, apply anything to it and then try and put yourself in their position of fear. And once again, that huge amount of guilt and shame that goes along with it. I think I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully this resonates a little bit. Madeleine's very open to talking, so if you've got any questions, it's not very hard to find her, to contact her, to have a discussion. I'll also, usually I don't write back to comments or messages, but for this one I will. Good or bad, if you want to have a go, come talk to me about it. Let's unpack what you're going through. That's it. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for listening. This is a bit of a heavy for a Monday morning, but let's do better, everybody. I think let's all work towards a common goal and start buffing out this bullshit that is it's unacceptable. in any case, in any way, in any shape or form. It's disgusting, and let's be better. Thanks, guys.